The bank statement trembled in Sarah's hands, the numbers shifting into indecipherable shapes as her stomach tightened. 3 missed mortgage payments impossible. She rechecked the figures, hoping they'd change, but they remained stubbornly the same, mocking her belief in their financial security. She was Sarah, and until this moment, she believed she knew everything about her life, her marriage, and their business. 27 years of marriage should teach you to read between the lines, to sense the rhythms of your shared life, but now, she was beginning to question that. This had to be some mistake, she told the bank representative on the phone, her voice steady despite the quiver in her hands. We have automatic payments set up. According to our records, those were canceled 3 months ago by your husband, came the reply. The words struck her like a physical blow. David had said nothing about any changes to their finances. In fact, just last week, they'd talked about renovating the guest bathroom. I see, she said, writing down the details of the new payment plan. The account receiving the transfers was under Eleanor Vance's name. Eleanor, her mother-in-law. Of course. She hung up, sitting at the kitchen island with the cold granite pressing against her palms. The house felt alien now, every familiar surface seeming to hide secrets. The antique clock that Eleanor had gifted them for their anniversary ticked with a mocking rhythm from the wall. As the front door creaked open, David's heavy footsteps echoed through the foyer. Honey, something smells good. She'd forgotten about the pot roast and the slow cooker, the dinner she had planned before everything unraveled. In the kitchen, she called out, sliding the bank statement under a magazine. He appeared in the doorway, his silver-streaked hair tousled by the wind, his smile genuine. That was what hurt the most, how normal he looked, how carefree. Rough day at the office? She asked, studying his face intently. The usual. Mom stopped by, wanted to discuss some investment opportunities. He loosened his tie, heading toward the wine rack. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Funny, she replied, her voice empty. I've been meaning to talk to you about the mortgage payments you've been rerouting to your mother's account. The wine bottle slipped from his hand, crashing to the floor, red liquid splattering across the tiles like blood seeping into the grout. David's face drained of color, his lips moving soundlessly. Sarah, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explained secretly diverting our money to Eleanor without telling your wife of 27 years. He took a cautious step toward her, careful to avoid the shattered glass. It's not what you think. Mom needed... She raised her hand. Don't you dare tell me what Eleanor needed. Tell me what I need, David. Tell me why I shouldn't walk out that door right now. 3 days after the mortgage revelation, she came home to find Eleanor's Mercedes in their driveway, its trunk open and stuffed with designer luggage. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. David appeared on the front steps, carrying another suitcase. It's temporary, he said before she could speak. Mom's condo is being renovated. How temporary? The words tasted like acid. Just a few weeks. He wouldn't meet her eyes. She's taking the guest room. Eleanor emerged from the house, immaculate in her cream cashmere sweater. Sarah, darling, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. David insisted when he heard about my situation. Of course he did. She forced a smile that felt like broken glass. What a surprise. Inside, Eleanor had already rearranged her living room furniture, pushing her grandmother's antique reading chair into a dark corner, the air reeking of her signature perfume, drowning out the lavender candles she'd lit that morning. I made dinner, Eleanor announced. Nothing fancy, just David's favorite pot roast recipe, the one I taught him growing up. Her stomach clenched. Pot roast, the same meal she'd been making when she discovered the diverted mortgage payments, the same recipe she'd perfected over decades of marriage, thinking it was David's favorite because it was hers. At dinner, Eleanor dominated the conversation, her voice honeyed as she detailed her renovation plans. The contractor says it could take longer than expected. These things always do. How fortunate you have somewhere to stay, she said, cutting her meat with precise movements. Family takes care of family. Eleanor reached across the table to pat David's hand. Isn't that right, sweetheart? David nodded, shoveling food into his mouth to avoid speaking. The silence stretched between them like a canyon. Sure, speaking of family, Eleanor continued, dabbing her lips with a napkin. I was thinking about Emily's wedding next month. Such a shame you two never experienced that joy yourselves having children, I mean. The fork clattered from her hand. David's head snapped up. Mother, oh, I'm sorry. Eleanor's eyes widened with practiced innocence. Was that insensitive? I just meant it must be difficult watching others live that dream. She stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Excuse me. Sarah, wait! David called after her, but she was already halfway up the stairs, her vision blurring. In their bedroom, she locked the door and pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. Below, she could see Eleanor's Mercedes claiming its space in their driveway like she claimed everything else. Her phone buzzed a text from Casey. Coffee tomorrow? You sound like you need to talk. She typed back quickly, Yes, and bring those real estate listings you mentioned just in case. The office was eerily quiet when Sarah arrived early, determined to find the answers she needed on David's computer while he was tied up in his morning meeting. Eleanor's renovation project had stretched into its third week, and the constant calls with the contractor were beginning to feel wrong. Sarah hadn't intended to become a spy in her own business, but desperate times called for desperate measures. David's password hadn't changed in 15 years. It was their wedding date, of all things. The irony was not lost on her. The file named Mother's Trust immediately caught her eye. Inside, spreadsheets laid out a meticulous record of transfers spanning 18 months, not just their mortgage payments, but everything. Company profits, personal savings, even the emergency fund she had carefully built over the years. What are you doing? The voice startled her, and she jumped. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale. David's niece, Eleanor's granddaughter, looked more like a frightened child than the confident marketing director she'd become. I could ask you the same thing, Sarah replied, quickly minimizing the screen. Your meeting isn't until 10. She closed the door behind Emily. I know about the money, Aunt Sarah. She's been taking everything. Sarah's fingers froze over the keyboard. How long have you known? 3 months. Emily's voice trembled. She told me it was temporary, that Uncle David agreed to help with her medical bills, but last week I overheard her talking about property in Florida. The pieces clicked into place, the lie about the renovation, the constant undermining, the draining of their finances. She's planning to convince David to move there with her, Sarah said, her words tasting bitter. Emily nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She's already bought the house in his name. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed a text from David. Where are you? Mother needs signatures for the new business accounts. New accounts, of course. I have proof, Emily whispered, pulling a USB drive from her pocket. Bank statements, recordings of her phone calls, everything. I've been collecting it since I realized. The door opened again. Eleanor stood there, her smile sharp as a knife. Collecting what, dear? Quickly, Emily shoved the USB drive into Sarah's hand behind the desk, slipping it into her pocket just as Eleanor walked into the room. Sarah, you're needed in the conference room. David's waiting, Eleanor said, her eyes flickering to the computer screen. Unless you're too busy snooping. Just checking quarterly reports, Sarah said, standing and brushing herself off. Emily was helping me understand the new filing system. Eleanor's gaze lingered on her granddaughter like a predator sizing up its prey. How helpful of her. Emily, your grandmother needs a word. As Emily left, Sarah caught her eye, trying to convey the reassurance she didn't feel. The USB drive in her pocket felt like a live grenade, ready to detonate their carefully constructed lies. In the hallway, she quickly texted Casey. Need your lawyer friend's number now. The game had changed. Eleanor wasn't just trying to control David anymore, she was trying to erase Sarah completely. Casey's office felt like neutral territory, a safe haven from the battlefield her life had become. She poured coffee while her lawyer friend, Julian, reviewed the contents of Emily's USB drive. "This is more than just financial manipulation," Julian said, turning his laptop screen toward her. "These emails between Eleanor and your accountant, they're discussing backdated documents, phantom expenses. It's fraud, Sarah." The coffee turned bitter in her mouth. "How much?" "Millions." He scrolled through spreadsheets. "They've been siphoning company profits through shell corporations for at least 2 years. Your signatures on some of these documents? That's impossible. They're forgeries," Casey interrupted, squeezing her hand. "Good ones, but forgeries." Her phone buzzed Emily. "Grandmother's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow, something about restructuring. Please hurry." Julian leaned forward. "You have 2 choices. We can take this to the authorities now, or I can attend that meeting tomorrow and catch them in the act." The words tasted like revenge on her tongue. "It's risky," Casey warned. "Eleanor's ruthless, and David made his choice." She stood, gathering her coat. "I need to see something for myself first." An hour later, she stood in front of her childhood home, the place where she dreamed of building her own family. The "for sale" sign looked fresh, her mother's garden overgrown beneath it. After she died, she couldn't bear to sell it. The spare key was still hidden under the loose brick. Inside, dust sheets covered the furniture like shrouds. On the mantel, her wedding photo sat exactly where she'd left it years ago. David and her, young and hopeful, his mother standing between them. She'd been standing between them ever since. Her phone rang David's number. "Where are you?" His voice sounded strained. "Mother's worried." "Is she?" She traced the edge of their wedding photo. "Tell me something, David. When did you forge my signature on those transfer documents?" Silence stretched between them like a chasm. "Sarah, please come home. We can talk about this." "Home?" She laughed, the sound echoing in the empty house. "I'm standing in our real home, the one you promised we'd renovate together, remember? Before your mother convinced you to buy that mansion instead." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She set the wedding photo face down. "See you at tomorrow's board meeting, David. I think it's time everyone understood." After hanging up, she texted Emily, "Get me everything you can on those Florida properties. And Emily, be careful. Your grandmother's watching." In her childhood bedroom, she opened her old jewelry box. Inside lay the key to their company safe, the one Eleanor didn't know about, the one where she'd kept her own records, just in case. Tomorrow would change everything. She just had to survive until then. The boardroom felt suffocating as Sarah placed copies of the evidence on each chair, documents of Emily's Florida property, bank statements, forged signatures. 27 years of marriage reduced to a pile of betrayals. Richard Hayes was the first to arrive, his face solemn. "Sarah, Eleanor's calling for a vote to remove you from the board." "I know." She adjusted the papers at her spot, her movements deliberate. "She's been planning this for months. David signed the motion this morning." Even though she had braced for the betrayal, the sting of it still cut deep. Board members trickled in, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock as they examined the documents. Eleanor entered last, with David trailing behind her like a shadow. When her eyes landed on the papers, she froze. "What's the meaning of this?" Her voice could have frozen fire. "Funny," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I was about to ask the same thing about these Florida properties." She projected the deeds onto the screen. Purchased with company funds through shell corporations in David's name. David's face went pale. "Mother, you said—" "Not now, dear." Eleanor's smile sharpened to a dangerous edge. "Sarah, you're clearly upset about the restructuring. Perhaps it's best if you—" "If I what? Disappear quietly, like the millions you've embezzled?" Sarah turned to the board. "Everything's documented, the fraud, the forgeries, the shell companies. You have no proof. Emily stood, her hands trembling. Yes, she does. I gave it to her. Emily's words sent shockwaves through the room. Eleanor's mask of control shattered. You ungrateful enough! Richard's voice cut through the rising chaos. These allegations are serious. What we need, Eleanor interjected sharply, is to vote now. She pulled out a document. I move to remove Ms. Walker from before we vote, Sarah said, her voice calm. You should know that the SEC received copies of everything this morning. And David? She locked eyes with him for the first time. I filed for divorce an hour ago. The room erupted in a wave of disbelief. David lunged forward. You can't what, protect myself, protect the company? Or did you think I'd keep pretending everything was fine while you and your mother tore apart everything we built? Eleanor's laughter rang out, cold and sharp. Built? You were nothing before us. Tell her, David. Tell her about the real reason I had to step in. Sarah's words were laced with pain as she turned toward him. David's face twisted, and he faltered. Mother, please. Tell me what? Eleanor's gaze flickered between them, her eyes darkening with something more sinister. Should I tell her about the baby, David? The one you lost before you met her? The reason you'll always choose me? The room fell into a heavy silence. David's hands trembled as he reached for Sarah. Sarah, I can explain. She stepped back, her world spinning on its axis. Choose, David. Right now. Your mother's lies or the truth. Because I'm done being the other woman in my own marriage. The boardroom door suddenly burst open. 2 FBI agents stepped in, their presence commanding the room. Perfect timing, Sarah said, calmly gathering her papers. They want to speak with everyone, especially you, Eleanor. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes, it's about surviving them. The FBI's questioning lasted hours. Through the glass walls of the conference room, she watched Eleanor weave her web of lies while David sat slumped beside her, looking older than she'd ever seen him. Emily appeared at her elbow with coffee. They're reviewing the offshore accounts now. Good. Her voice sounded hollow even to her. Did you tell them about the safety deposit box? She nodded, then hesitated. Aunt Sarah, there's something else. Something grandmother said about Uncle David's past. Don't. The word came out sharper than intended. Whatever Eleanor is claiming about David's lost child, it wasn't just a child. Richard Hayes stepped into the room, holding a weathered manila envelope. It was his wife. The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. First wife, Richard continued, before you. She died in childbirth. Eleanor. She blamed David, said if he'd listened to her about the pregnancy risks the room spun. 27 years of marriage, and she'd never known. All those times Eleanor had weaponized her infertility, while David sat silent, carrying this weight. Through the glass, she watched David finally push away from his mother's side. He walked toward her, but she backed away. Don't, she whispered. Just don't. Sarah, please, his voice cracked. I wanted to tell you so many times. Times when? Between letting your mother steal our money and planning your secret Florida escape? I never wanted Florida, Mother said. He stopped, realization dawning. She used it against me, all of it. Lily's death, the baby. You. Eleanor's voice cut through the room like a blade. I protected you after what happened with Lily. You needed me. You'll always need me. The FBI agent cleared his throat. Mrs. Vance, we're not finished. Oh, I think we are. Eleanor's smile turned vicious. David, darling, tell them about the real embezzlement, about how Sarah's been skimming profits for years. Show them that evidence we discussed. Her blood froze. The fabricated documents she discovered in the safe, the ones she thought were meant to frame Emily, they'd been meant for her all along. David teetered between them, the weight of 27 years hanging in the balance. Agent Johnson, he said quietly. I'd like to make a full confession about everything, starting with what my mother made me do to my first wife. Eleanor's scream of rage echoed through the building as they led her away, but it was David's silence that shattered what remained of her heart. She walked out of the office without looking back, leaving behind the shards of 2 marriages and 1 man's broken soul. Sometimes, winning feels exactly like losing. Eleanor's bail hearing drew a crowd. She sat in the back row, watching her perform for the judge, the grieving mother, the misunderstood grandmother, the pillar of society wrongly accused. Her designer suit couldn't hide the steel beneath her smile. David testified first, his voice steady as he detailed decades of manipulation, the lost child, the dead wife, the carefully cultivated guilt that bound him to his mother's will. Then came her turn. Mrs. Walker, Eleanor's lawyer began, isn't it true you orchestrated this entire situation to seize control of the company? No. She met Eleanor's eyes across the courtroom. I orchestrated it to free my husband. Eleanor's mask slipped. Liar, you never loved him. You just wanted order. The judge warned her, but Eleanor was already on her feet. Tell them, David. Tell them how she trapped you after Lily died, how she— Mother, stop! David's voice cut through her tirade. Lily died because you convinced me she was too weak for motherhood, just like you tried to convince me about Sarah. The courtroom fell silent. I did everything for you, Eleanor whispered. You did everything for yourself. David stood. And I let you, because facing the truth about Lily was harder than believing your lies. Eleanor's composure shattered. She would have died anyway. The pregnancy was too risky. I saved you from watching another wife destroy herself trying to give you children. I saved you from Sarah doing the same. Saved him. She couldn't stop the laugh that escaped. You destroyed him. Every decision, every choice, you twisted it all to keep him dependent on you. But you made one mistake, Eleanor. And what's that? She sneered. You thought breaking him would break me. Instead, it showed me who he really was, a man worth saving from you. Your Honor, Eleanor's lawyer interrupted. My client, your client, just confessed to involvement in Lily Evans's death, the judge said quietly. Bailiff, take her into custody. As they led Eleanor away, she turned to David one last time. Everything I did was for love. No, Mother. David's voice was gentle. Everything you did was for control, and I'm done being controlled. He walked toward her, stopping just short of touching. I know it's too late for us. It was too late the moment you chose her lies over our truth. I know. He smiled sadly. But watching you fight for me, it helped me finally fight for myself. She stood, gathering her coat. Goodbye, David. Sarah? His voice stopped her at the door. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to deserve your kind of love. She didn't look back. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about saving yourself from becoming them. The real estate sign was removed from her childhood home as Emily helped Sarah carry in the last box. Her mother's garden was in desperate need of care, but with spring approaching, there would be time to breathe new life into it. Uncle David signed the company over to you, Emily said, unpacking kitchen items. He's moving to Seattle, starting fresh. Sarah nodded, carefully placing her grandmother's teacups into the cabinet, the same ones Eleanor had once dismissed as too ordinary all those years ago. You'll make a better CEO than any of us, Emily continued. Because I learned from your mistakes, Sarah replied. Because you learned from our silence, Emily corrected, her voice soft. The doorbell rang, and Sarah opened the door to find Casey standing on the porch with Richard Hayes holding a bottle of wine. Housewarming, Casey said with a smile, though technically you're just coming home. They sat together in the garden, watching the sunset bathe the sky in hues of redemption. Richard cleared his throat, then spoke. The board approved your consulting firm's contract, 3 years of exclusive rights to restructure the company's management. Helping other women recognize financial abuse and manipulation, Casey added. It's perfect for you. It's necessary, Sarah corrected, her thoughts drifting to Eleanor, sitting in her prison cell, still clinging to the misguided belief that love meant control. She thought of David, finally free but forever marked by the distorted version of devotion that Eleanor had imposed on him. Emily's phone buzzed. She looked at the message, then said, "Grandmother's appeal was denied. 20 years minimum." The wine tasted sweeter now, though not because of victory. It was something quieter, something like peace. "I have something for you," Richard said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "David asked me to give you this before he left." Inside was a key and a deed their vacation cottage in Maine, the one place Eleanor had never set foot, a place untouched by her influence, where Sarah and David had once dreamed of a future together. "He signed it over to your consulting firm," Richard explained, "for women who need a safe place to rebuild." Her throat tightened as the weight of it all hit her. In the end, David had found his courage too late for their marriage, but maybe just in time for others. Just then, a young woman appeared at the garden gate, clutching a business card. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice trembling. "The women's shelter gave me your number. They said you could help." Sarah noticed the way the young woman twisted her wedding ring, the fear in her eyes and the shame in her posture. She saw the desperate need to believe that love shouldn't hurt this much. "Come in," Sarah said, standing. "Let me put on some tea." Emily gave Sarah's hand a gentle squeeze as she passed by. Casey and Richard exchanged knowing glances. They understood it was no longer about revenge. It was about recognition. It was about breaking the silence that allows manipulation to masquerade as love. Surrounded by the garden that had witnessed both her breakdown and her rebuilding, Sarah finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free and helping others find their way to freedom too. The young woman followed her inside, her steps unsure but determined, much like Sarah's had been not so long ago, and much like hers were now, but for entirely different reasons.